time slowed down. And all of a sudden, it's like that thing within me that breathes, that beats my heart, the real me, that isn't Vlad. It all made sense right there.
And welcome back to another episode of Ameer Approved. I'm your host, Ameer Rosic. I got my good buddy, Vladimir Druts, who's a lifelong learner, entrepreneur, and marketer. Vladimir's quest is to understand the world, push himself to better, and optimize his life has taken him on a journey through the Himalayan mountains, into years of meditation, and my favorite topic, psychedelic practice.
There we go, baby.
Vladimir, brother, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Doing great. Really trying to optimize my day, build a ritual.
Oh, yeah?
Surrounding my life and just really focus on like this concept of arete. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
So it's an ancient Greek concept.
How would I guess? Greek, of course. Of course.
You got to love the Greeks, right? And for them, the concept of arete was like the best capacity, the best state that a given thing can become. So when somebody is living through arete, they are becoming their best selves. They're kind of living in that state continuously. So that's something that I'm kind of trying to like achieve lately. I've lost friggin' almost 30 pounds in 3 months.
Shut up, really?
Yeah. Went from benching like lucky enough to do like free weight 50s to like 90. 3 months, dude.
What did he do?
Work, practice, consistency, intermittent fasting,
Okay.
meditation, ritual, skincare.
Yeah, we'll get to skincare later on. But let's talk about ritual.
Yeah, man. Ritual is really fascinating because it's like I've had this journey recently where throughout my life I've really struggled. I have like ADHD. I'm so distractible, and it's gotten harder with technology, right? Because I'm also like such a techno geek. So social media really did a number on me. All of this stuff really did a number on me. And I think throughout my life, I've kind of, let's say, inculcated certain habits and built certain habits without really realizing their power. And fantastic, they worked. But then I got thrown off the bandwagon, so to speak. And I was always trying to seek out balance, how to be the best version of myself, and failing and failing and failing. And there was always this component that this like layer on top of that habit, this like mindfulness, this reverence, where a habit becomes something super powerful and not just automatic, that I kind of like bumped into, but I never fully understood. And I think only recently have I really begun to understood what ritual is. And it takes habit and it makes it imbues it with reverence and it gives it more power. And that's done by virtue of the steps that you take in a very specific way. And the steps themselves might not have any sort of like purpose, but the greater picture has a purpose. And so like even religious rituals and rites, right? If you look at Japan, you look at the tea ceremony, they do things in a very specific way with a lot of intent, a lot of attention. And God forbid they make a misstep, right? So this builds this incredible like esteem for that practice. And it's on top of the habit, but it's so much more powerful.
And so what got you interested? Like you mentioned you're a lifelong learner.
Yeah.
I know you're big in neuroscience and studying cognitive biases. And
yeah,
I love the posts you make on Facebook as well and psychedelic researcher. But what was the kind of the catalyst to bring you down that rabbit hole?
In terms of the ritual?
In general, there's like this deep, let's say almost kind of like an addiction.
Mm-hmm. Dude, it really is an addiction for me. And that, that's a good question. It's hard to say. It's like, are you born entrepreneurial? Is it something you can learn? Are you born a searcher, a seeker? Is it something you can learn? I do think it's something that you can learn. But for me, I feel like it's something that I just happened to be born with, just this natural inquisitiveness. I just wanted to learn more about the world. Things didn't make sense. What people said, how the world was, there was a huge disconnect, right? Between what people said it should be like and the way that things were in reality. So I think like I got into psychology because of that. I think I got into the whole cognitive biases because of that. I think I got into psychedelics because of that, a lot of soul searching, self searching.
What are things that didn't make sense to you, though? Like, can you give us examples?
I think a lot of it had to do with kind of parental things or just the way that, people said you should be and act and show up in society. And the fact that so few people actually did that. That a lot of people act very pious, like they have, like their intent is to help others, but in reality, it's selfish. I think that there's a lot of things that we do where we're kind of half asleep. We're kind of going through the motions. We're not being real with ourselves first and foremost. And we're kind of like defaulting into the journey that we've bought into by virtue of not wanting to take a firm stance on something in the morning, so to speak. Like when you wake up, you have a choice and a chance to be somebody and to create something, to say, I'm going to be the type of person that does this and live by that. And I think a lot of us just default into what we've been told by our parents, what we've been told by society, etc., because a lot of us are afraid to, make a choice because we'd have to be held accountable for whatever happens. So I don't know if that kind of explained it or just made it more abstract.
Yeah, like I'm interested to know, because the saying, the last straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah.
I'm always fascinated. I'm fascinated when somebody has an aha moment, when they had narratives in their mind for so long, and then the narratives change. And obviously, it's not because of one thing. It's a compound effect of exposure to different ideas and different narratives and maybe life experiences, and you really go through it yourself. It's like, you and I, our families both come from former communist countries.
Yeah.
And I have, you have a rise of leftists over here, and they're talking about socialism. Like, you motherfuckers never lived through socialism. Like quote unquote, whatever the fuck real socialism is.
Right. It's not real socialism,
I'm like,
of course. Yeah.
Both our parents left. They ran away from think about it. They left the country. They left their friends. They left their family because how fucked up it was to come somewhere better. But yet you have people over here that have never experienced that saying,
no.
Fucking socialism.
Yeah. Give me more stuff, more free stuff. My parents came here, they barely had $100 to their name. Like we had to go into recycle bins. We had to go to the garbage. Like if we found a TV in the garbage that turned on, this was like Christmas for me. It was amazing. Whatever was on the side of the street, right? Hand-me-downs, like that was life. And frankly, it was a happy life. You really appreciated what little you had. And coming from a place like Soviet Russia, where, I tell this story and it's like, it's gonna be my grandpa's story, but like I waited for 4 hours to get a banana in line, 4 hours. Bananas happened to come in. You never had them. People lined up, and myself as like a 4-year-old or whatever, I had to wait for 4 hours to get a banana, which was probably not ripe anyway. So my father, for him especially, seeing him, because he's gone through hell and hellwater to get here, it's really tough for him to see what's happening socially, what things are kind of like accepting carte blanche, so to speak.
Why do you think this is happening?
I think as human beings, there is this like, it's almost like a bias, let's call it. But when things get too good, we begin to look for problems. There's even a study that came out that kind of touches on this. I don't remember who the researcher was, but essentially, when our life becomes really, really good, and when we kind of go up the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, so to speak, and check off all those boxes, we have everything we need, we often begin to look for problems. Let's say before we get to that place where it's like real self-fulfillment and like making an impact, leaving a legacy, before we get to that point, once all of other physical needs are met, we start to look for social problems to fix, things to complain about. It's very easy to look elsewhere, a gaping hole inside of us, so that, again, we don't have to live our arete moment.
I have a hard time grasping the mindset of certain individuals, because it's one thing to maybe talk about that pre-circa communist Russia, or Russia, Yugoslavia, all this former China. But we have so much historical evidence today of how bad that system is. Millions and millions dead. But yet, it's like, why the cognitive dissonance? Like, here's what has happened under systems like that. Oh, no, our system will be better.
Dude, I think you hit it on, you hit the nail on the head, so to speak. Like, number one, I think there's a few things there that we can touch base on. Is the fact that, like, we're not very good with evidence, right? We dig our heels in when we're presented with evidence that's contrary to whatever our opinion of the day happens to be, even if it's blatantly wrong and based on no evidence, nothing substantial, everything circumstantial. We dig our heels in, right? Because it's like a fight. So I think that's part of it. I think a lot of us just aren't taught the full history, number one. Like, I think the educational system needs a bit of a revamp, a little bit of a rejig.
Revamp, huh? It's an understatement.
Yeah, being polite here. And then the other component is just us, man. It's like we like to be asleep. We like to have our comfort. We like to feel like, no, I'm good. I know my stuff. I've got an opinion. Yeah. And so we just ignore evidence. And it's tough for everybody. Like, this is why even in science, sometimes a generation of scientists has to die before like a new novel idea or theory will be adopted. And it's just those friggin' pesky cognitive biases back.
It's like the guy with the H. pylori study.
Yeah.
So he was saying for the longest time, like H. pylori is a thing. Like, this isn't like a symptom of something else. And for the longest time, researchers and scientists like, no, dude, you're crazy. And eventually, like, I'll show you, he drank it. Like, I'll show you in real time that H. pylori does fucking exist.
That was a crazy moment. That was a kind of balls deep, hero's journey moment.
Yeah. And so for me, it's fascinating because yes, people have different narratives, and social media is exponentially piggybacking off our already biases that we have and making it worse and creating something called the wedge, a chasm. And you have now minority groups of all different spectrums screaming the loudest. Generally speaking, most people just want to live in peace and fucking leave me alone for the most part. They don't. I always wonder though too, is like, yo, what do these people do?
Dude, that's what they do, right?
No, I'm serious. Like, how the fuck you, like, do you work?
Yeah.
Like when people are protesting all the time.
Yeah.
Not like the Hong Kong stuff. That's like do or die, but like regular protesting. I'm like, are you a full-time protester? I'm like, oh, are you fucking working? Like, what do you do? That's a whole different conversation. But I'm always interested where it's like, obviously, two different narratives aren't communicating. Yeah. They're just throwing stats. And both of them have their own, confirmation bias, sunk cost bias, and they're throwing narratives at each other. No one's listening. Yeah, so they can both agree. Both of them will agree that no one's listening.
Yeah.
In reality, when you look at it, a lot of people, whether it's left or right, they have a lot in common and very minority of differences. Those differences cause the chasm, the wedge. I'm interested, though, is, you've gone through your own experiences. I don't know if you want to talk about it. What has worked for you that you've utilized, whether it's mental frameworks or tools to kind of better know yourself and to better integrate information that you get?
It's a brilliant question, man. And it's like, it's one that I need to spend a little bit more time thinking about, because I think like it's been almost like I've been boiled in fine wine, let's call it, or whatever, like a toad that hasn't noticed. But over time, I've just adopted a lot of these things. And I think I'm also going through this kind of point in my life where I'm building them out. I'm kind of categorizing them, putting them on paper, just to really understand what it was that helped me. And I know what it was in some ways, and in other ways, cognitively, maybe I don't. But I think just part of it was knowledge I have acquired along the way. Things like, the Socratic method or the Stoics, or again, going back to Greece, or like the notions like the unexamined life is not worth living. And it's not because like you can't live life without it, but like if you don't examine things, you're defaulting into somebody else's worldview. And I think like I always wanted to push forward and to realize things on my own.
Is there an example that you had I want to say opinion, but a narrative on one thing, then over time you've changed it?
Oh, all the time, man. So here's something like, and this is a value. I think that we need to have the right values in life. And for me, a value is that I want to be fair and just, and I want to have an open mind. And so, and sometimes, look, man, I hunker down too, especially like I can get into an argument very easily, right? But I think there's always this component of me where I wake up in the day and I'm like, the thing that I value the most is truth and honesty and like finding common ground.
Yes.
So like I try to extend olive branches to see where people are coming from. And look, man, sometimes I falter too, and I try to push my perspective, right? I've done that. But it's like every single time I kind of learn something from it. And I actually went down a deep rabbit hole through social media when all of this political stuff was happening. And
damn it, social media.
I started posting a lot, and just, it was a bit of a nightmare. And it kind of turned me into a bit of a curmudgeon, to be honest. Okay. And so like I had that, and I had to come out of it and be like, holy cow, like, there was a lot of people messaging me and saying, thank you so much for what you posted, hurrah, like you're speaking the truth.
Yeah.
But in reality, like, what difference did it make? And the other component is it probably pissed off some people who, whatever, they probably would have been pissed off for any other reason. But I think for me, another value is like to be good to people, and that's something that I had lost along the way somewhere in this search for truth.
Yeah.
So it's like the razor's edge, man. I think like you're always walking that balancing act. What's important?
Yeah, I think I'll give you an example of something in my life. For the longest time, I thought, well, you must be fucking crazy to join the military. Like, makes no fucking sense. I'm like, you're just giving up your life. And that was my thinking for a very long time. And it wasn't until like I had friends to go through the military and I started understanding more or less the psychological reasoning. And I sat down with my friends, not over fucking social media, like one-to-one like this, over time, understanding what's the reasoning? Like, why did he go there? Then I collect I never understood this perspective. Oh, really? This and that. And it slowly built up. And this is something I've changed my mind on. I think military does have a good benefit in going through the training, regiments that you go, and psychological benefits
self-esteem,
of it. Self-esteem,
habits,
building bonds, tribal, the skills that you learn. A lot of benefits. Just the negatives, going to war and fighting for a fake war, that's the negatives, right? But I never understood. I thought people were just stupid. And then it wasn't until I sat down over a long period of time and sitting down one-to-one just talking with people, fuck social media and all these stupid blogs, and I really understood their perspective on this.
Yeah, I think I've had largely kind of the same thing happen in my life. I think I've always been somebody who has a lot of different types of friends, so I really value different perspectives and opinions. I watch a lot of documentaries. I've put myself out there to try to soak in as much as possible. And a lot of the time, my kind of mind, my footing has been disrupted. Part of that, I'm sure, has been meditation. Part of it has been psychedelics to really push me to my own boundaries, well past my boundaries, right? Like some journeys that I've taken for self-discovery and all those types of things. There's been lots of things. Like I've changed, I used to be extraordinarily liberal, a bit of a leftist actually, especially coming out of university.
Blasphemy.
My dad's like, that is blowing up right now. But he remembers, he was there.
Yeah.
And I think like
But how old were you at that time, you think?
Early 20s.
I think most
20s.
people are leftists when they're early. It's like utopic. You're like, oh yeah. Then you like grow up and you start paying taxes and you see everything like, oh, fuck this.
Yeah, my dad's whole thing is like, if you're not a lefty and you're young, you have no heart.
Yeah.
And if you're not like, well, for him, you're not a conservative, let's call it, and you're older, then you have no brain.
That's a good one, yeah.
It's cute. But I think those types of things, coming into contact with other ideas, other people, and really understanding and trying to understand what their perspective is. And if that perspective is based in something that is credible and makes sense and can show, if you can show some proof, some sort of proof points, some sort of tangible evidence for why it makes sense to hold that, I'm all for it. And I think my mind has expanded by virtue of that. So like even, to be honest, I used to be very wishy-washy on vaccines, a lot of scientific things. And it's because I didn't really understand the scientific method as well as I do now. I took a lot of things for granted. When I was younger, I was also very into conspiracies. Not to say that conspiracies don't exist, right? They do. But it's like, there's a very fine line between...
Telling me the Earth's not flat?
Yeah, what? Lizard people aren't running the world?
Lizard people, Earth's not flat. The flat one boggles my mind.
Oh, brother.
Like, it's entertaining.
No, it's amazing. It's amazing because like now they have these episodes where flat earthers are talking to scientists, and it's like, again, it's just watching the cognitive biases in play and how people like hunker down and just argue, and they don't even have the semantic capacity, the language, the tool set built up to have a conversation with the scientists. They're just the scientists are way out of their league, but they're so convinced of their righteous, like,
I always I have a friend of mine, crazy conspiracy guy.
I have a friend like that too.
Crazy. And we're talking one time. And I don't know I don't know, maybe he was talking about some like humanoids. I don't know, some kind of other creatures around the world. I don't fucking, some other lizard, I don't know, some creature. I'm like a simpleton. I'm like, dude, I'm going to follow you on this. He believes the earth is flat too.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, the earth's flat. And there's lizard people. That doesn't change anything for me.
I'm good, baby.
Does this data somehow help me?
Right.
Like, does this make my life better? My family? Am I making more money somehow? Am I helping? Like, how do I use this data? It's like, there's a lizard.
Yeah. How does it change? What can I do? How does it change my life?
So a lot of this data
can improve
is
my life.
Irrelevant to me, regardless of if it's true or irrelevant.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Like if you told me I know how to turn copper to gold, I'm like, all right, bro.
Yeah, you're very practical.
Yeah, that's alchemy. Let's go do this.
Alchemy.
All right.
Is that something you're into, alchemy?
I don't
have
know too much
studio back here in the back, little alchemist.
That's how we fund all this.
Yeah, no doubt. It's just, I think like what we're getting to here is truly what fascinates me about human beings. Like I have a bunch of scribbled notes here about cool shit to talk about, but for me, it's like it comes back to this thing about human being a storytelling animal first and foremost. Yes. And like Harari's book, *Sapiens*,
great book,
so incredible.
Yes, highly recommend it, guys. Read it.
This concept that like it's not tools that distinguish us from other creatures and other animals. No. They use tools. Yes. Crows use tools. Yes. Monkeys use tools. Squirrels sometimes use tools. Like
birds, bro.
Absolutely. Yeah. And but it's our ability to weave stories, to communicate stories, to build them up to such a degree where somebody's all of a sudden willing to die for somebody else's story.
Yep.
Like, what is that?
Software.
Yeah, dude. Software.
You ever read, his name's skipping my mind right now, Nick Bostrom's Simulation Theory?
Oh, the universe as a simulation or
we're in a
hologram?
simulation, yeah.
And
the more I read it, the more I look at things. I'm like, yeah.
I've had some wild psychedelic experiences that actually like, fully encapsulated that moment and brought it into like my purview. Yeah, like made it freaking real.
Oh, yeah?
Terrifyingly so.
You want to go in detail on that?
Oh, man. There's
like, what was it?
Yeah. Well, there's been a couple of things. When I was younger, I was a psychonaut. I was doing a lot of soul searching. I was heavily into meditation.
Really? At a young age?
Yeah, very heavily. Well, let's say like in my early 20s. I did it religiously for about 6 years. I was really trying to push my boundaries. I was also, I had a lot of suffering built up through a tough childhood, and I was trying to figure out how to get through to something. When I was really young, I actually like went through this moment where I felt so sorry for myself because of shit that happened to me that I would like beat all of the pain out of myself. I have no problem with sharing this right now because it's something that I went through. It was like a really terrible coping mechanism because I didn't know any better. I would physically beat it out of myself to the degree that like a year or two later, I became a complete stone. Like even later when I would be dating women, I would receive a hug from somebody I was supposed to love. I would feel nothing, zero, absolute zero. And I would go through these depressions and everything since my childhood. And it's like, I was a bit of a mess back then. I always had that heat-seeking missile. Like, there's got to be something better. There's got to be some truth that, like, I don't understand. Falling, getting back up, falling, getting back up. And I think, like, the meditation, the psychedelics was part of that journey that was extremely helpful to me because it showed me a part of myself I wasn't willing to accept and see. And I know you're into psychedelics, and I think you've probably had similar journeys.
I've been like before I even knew the word psychonaut, I've been doing psychedelics since I was like 14. I was a party animal though. I never went to high school. I got kicked out when I was grade 9. We're all like, oh God, the brain cells I fucking destroyed.
That's where the danger comes in, right? It's like
the drinking and the partying and like, fuck, like from the age of like, and mind you, I was 15, 16-year-old making a shit ton of money for that age. Complete freedom.
Dangerous.
Oh, fuck yeah. But a lot of good stories. Like from the age of like 15 to like 21, man, it was a fucking shit show.
Yeah, your brain's not even like fully developed yet, right?
No,
all of a sudden you get all that freedom.
Yeah, 21 is when your frontal lobe.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. But psychedelics is, for me, it's lately in the last like year and a half, I haven't been doing any bolus hero journey doses.
Yeah, me neither.
Actually, very loosely I use psychedelics these days, more kind of microdosing. Experimentations with different types of microdosing. So not just psilocybin, but it'll be like, whether it's psilocybin with different mushrooms like lion's mane, or whether it's like psilocybin mixed with LSD, or even I've been doing a bunch of microdosing with iboga.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Right, and finding really good results with that as well. So more or less kind of figuring out different types of microdosing, but using it very strategically. So I wouldn't just take it, I'm just going to use it to discover myself. I would take it when I felt the necessity to take it. So it's like, I'm stressed out. Why am I stressed out?
Yeah.
Do I have a big workload? Not really. What's stressing me out? You know, what's on my mind? I can identify the stress.
Problem solver almost.
Yeah.
As a tool.
Like a magnifying glass, and pick up the rocks and look underneath the rocks. Like I got to figure out, like there's this emotion that I label as stress. It's the best way that I can describe it as. But I have no fucking idea where is it coming from, why it exists, why now out of all places. I need some kind of tools to help me figure out.
Yeah, I've always used marijuana in that sense.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes I do smoke. Yeah, I smoke it very infrequently, but when I do, it's like sometimes, to take the edge off, chill out. But a lot of it is just to give me a new perspective, like a fresh perspective on a problem, So I can see psychedelics definitely, especially microdosing, which I've never done. It's something I'd like to try. But speaking of like, mushrooms and LSD, and I had gone through this heavy psychedelic discovery period, where I was a psychonaut and trying a lot of different things. And, funny enough, like the moments looking back on those like epic heroes journeys that I went through with a good friend of mine, Daniel Todorov, who's now in the States as a UX designer. But what I went through at that point, the things that I learned the most about myself that actually helped me, the type of resounding stories that I've carried with me forward, was when I took them without any expectation. It's like, I don't know. I went into it. I took it, a situation, kind of like presented itself, and I did it. And those were not only the most terrifying moments, because I was faced with everything I had been trying to escape up until that point, but by virtue of that, also the most incredibly like insightful.
Have you ever experimented with like MDMA therapy?
I haven't. I've been very interested in it, actually. It's something that I'm very interested in today. Yeah.
Believe it or not, like psilocybin, I've had crazy, I don't like to label it bad experience. It is an experience and there's something to learn from it, and I've learned a lot. But when I look back in hindsight, it's like, it was pretty fucked. Like crazy shit.
Oh yeah.
And I realized why I went through it. So it's not like a mystery, like, why did I have a bad trip? It's like, no, you idiot.
Yeah.
These are the reasons why.
Like you had some sort of, we call it an engram or whatever, but you had some sort of like thinking that, that you were kind of attached to. And you didn't want to let go of.
Exactly.
And it was like,
But for MDMA, at least for me specifically, and I do it maybe max twice a year only, it's been the most integrative when it comes to talkative therapy. For me, I've had a lot of PTSD, gone through a lot of shit in my life.
Same, brother.
And so when I'm on shrooms, I'm not a very talkative person. I'm more experiential, like the feeling, textile, aesthetics, like immersed.
Synesthesia connects you to the world.
Exactly. That's why I have to be in nature if I do. I can't be indoors. It's just one of my things.
Totally agree.
But for MDMA, it's almost like your thoughts. You can distinguish what you're feeling internally, your emotions, and to formulate that into language. It's kind of like an onion, right? So you're peeling back one layer, and then you have this emotion. Now, emotion is a feeling we have. The next step into healing is like you have to take this emotion you have and translate that into words. And so for me, at least with MDMA therapy, it's given me the best tools to peel the onion, identify my emotions, translate them into language, to understand what I felt, and to kind of integrate the process from that.
Yeah. And what would you recommend like to do once, let's say you've integrated it, like let's say you've turned it into language? What is the best way, do you think, to build a new habit loop on top of that? I've always seen emotions as, not things that are kind of naturally occurring, but things that we kind of build up. And that's just by virtue of running into other people that react completely differently to very similar situations, right? With a very different type of emotion, right?
I think context matters. Like a lot of my issues stem with my relationship with my dad. I think, for me at least, that's the you have to have an anchor point. Each deep onion layer of emotion has a different anchor point where that trauma happened from. Like the reason why you behave a certain way, or how you perceive the world, or how you are in general, is because of your upbringing. Now you have your hardware, which you're born with, which you can't really control as of yet. Maybe in the future you can. And then you have your ancestral traits, which we've shown in studies through epigenetics. The mouse studies, really famous study with the lime scent and the taser stuff. And so you've had zero control pretty much till you're adult. When you're on your own, then you can control. But then you have like 18 years of pressure.
Yeah.
And then while you're doing the therapy, you're peeling back your onion layers and emotions. There's anchor points. There has to be a juxtaposition of why did you feel this at this point? At least for me, it's on the fatherhood side. And so for me, it's more or less identifying the causation of it and coming to terms. So whether it's, a male to father issue or mother issue, or maybe like bullying as a young kid, it just comes back to understanding why you felt that. So the integration for me, it's like, okay, I always say this, like it's becoming like a therapy session. I love my father, but I don't per se respect him. Big difference. I don't respect him.
Understand.
Right? And so for me, it's like, you ever meet somebody and you just don't like them?
Yeah.
Like you never spoke with them?
For sure. There's just there's like a weird kinesthetic vibe, energy.
And the best thing I heard before is like, the reason why you don't like that person is they're a representation of you. You're just projecting stuff that you don't like about yourself.
Totally.
Yeah. And so for me, that was kind of like my aha moment, where it's like everything that I don't like about him is like
part of you.
And I see it.
For sure, dude. Kind of as a jumping off point, like there's a book that I read recently, and it's been so incredibly life-changing in terms of like, I have a long journey of overcoming a lot of, like you say, PTSD, a lot of stresses from when I was in my youth. And I've gone through a lot of these moments where it's like, I've just thought about it, and I've talked to some therapists about it, and just like it, at least in my experience, it always seemed like talking about it, trying to figure out was like a tooth trying to bite a tooth. Like,
but I think talking about it is not integrating it. Because talking about it is like your window shopper.
Right.
It's like, hey, there it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Hi, how you doing? As opposed to like you and I are both Joseph Campbell lovers, and in mythology, specifically in Buddhism, Nietzsche talks about these young all of them. Anyone with two marbles knows this. The problem with talking about anything is we're separating from ourselves. Like this, like third entity is like, oh, it's not really part of us. It's not me. In reality, like if you look at Buddhism or if you look at mythology, you look at like the hidden shadows in ourselves, is about accepting a part of you. Nietzsche has a great saying: "Be careful to cast out the devil from you, because you're casting out the best part of you."
Everything is like a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Yeah. Usually our best qualities are our worst qualities.
Yeah. So instead of negating it, like people like to label it, right? There's a Vedic saying, if you label me, you negate me. People like to label something like, well, I'm angry. And like my primary dominance is like anger.
Right.
Like that's kind of like my substrate. Anger and cynical. I'm like, I don't trust people, right? Instead of saying, oh, this is a horrible trait of me, like I need to eliminate that. You're never gonna eliminate it. It's gonna become worse. Joseph Campbell's definition of the devil is internal energies that you have ignored and not love, and they manifest to become your very own devils. Yeah. You become your own devil because you don't accept them, you don't recognize them, you don't love them, you don't incorporate them as part of you, but they are fucking part of you.
That which you try to abandon, that which you try to strike off will often end up owning you. Yeah. It's like impossible because it's you. You can't run away from yourself.
Correct.
You can't just all of a sudden be like, all right, it's gone.
There's no duality.
Yeah. Well, I read this book by Maxwell Maltz, who was Psycho-Cybernetics.
Yeah,
you ever read
long time ago.
It is honestly the most incredible book. And I've read a lot of incredible books, but like from the perspective of just succinct how to and like an understanding of the framework of the mind as like this goal-oriented organism, and what happens to the mind when it doesn't have a proper goal, and what happens to the mind when the thinking patterns have become destructive. It's absolutely mind-boggling in terms of how much I've gleaned from this book about like my past and thinking about how I used to think, how I used to see things, how I used to react to things, and so I'm able to now go back in time, kind of rewrite a story, so to speak. And frankly, like change my emotions in some sense surrounding certain things. And I think actually with this MDMA therapy, I think it could be like a whole nother level.
Yeah, I think it's, at least for me, it's done a lot of good. There's a bunch of other therapies out there. I think there's no panacea.
Dude, you know what's crazy is going back to this whole Soviet Union thing and, coming from the Eastern Bloc, at that juncture, in that time and space, mental health wasn't a thing. Like, oh, you got a problem? Suck it up.
Mm-hmm.
Drink.
Yeah.
That's how people dealt with their problems. Yeah. They drank, themselves into an early grave or a stupor. And it's so unfortunate. It's so unfortunate. And so many good people have been crushed by the weight of their own minds, their own issues, So many of our ancestors back. Like, therapy is important, But I firmly believe that, like, the type of therapy that will do the most good is the type where you're not just ruminating on the past hurts and bringing them up, but you're really thinking about, like, what is it that you can do today?
Correct.
How can you think differently today to, like, switch it up? Because it's like, if I sit there and talk about that I'm weak, that if 3 months ago and I was like 30 pounds heavier, if I was just pissing at myself for like being heavy, but I didn't go to the gym to actually do anything, it wouldn't have done a good for me.
So you bring up a good point. I'm a firm believer that so-called willpower is a scam. Just like in computer software, there's a substrate and you have whatever computer language you want, and in the environment, it behaves a certain way, different environments. Okay. I'll give you an example right now. I was at a gym, really beautiful gym, downtown Toronto, right in the core, around Eden Center. Has everything you can possibly think about. I never went. Why? Because it lived too far.
Right.
Simple as that, logistics. So I found a gym close to me, close as possible. I actually got a co-working, like a office I do 1 hour a day, right literally across it.
Yeah.
What happened? Well, I go there every day because it takes me less than 10 minutes to get to the gym. It's like 7 minutes from my front door. And so going back to the therapy, the problem is it's not just you within this computer code. It is you plus the context that you're in. So if you are, obviously it always starts with you. You're always first. You got to work on yourself. There's this Rumi saying, yesterday I wanted to change the world, but today yesterday I was clever, I want to change the world. Today I'm wise, I want to change myself. But that can only go so far if you're living in a very bad substrate. Absolutely. Like if your wife, or vice versa, husband, wife, or wife, husband, whatever, if they're the opposite and now evolving with you, growing with you, good fucking luck.
Yeah, if you're in a negative, toxic environment, like,
good fucking luck.
Yeah. It's like, your genes, are the gun, environment pulls the trigger. You have to change your environment.
Yeah.
And it actually brings you back to like the whole topic of habits and why they're so powerful. Well, you've been creating this habit of going to the gym by defaulting yourself into it by making it super easy for yourself.
Yeah, no resistance.
Yeah, exactly. Like resistance, man, like we do things. We use the phone because there's so little resistance with using the phone. That's why we're so addicted to it, right? It feels good. So yeah, I'm totally in full agreement there. Like I totally get that.
Yeah, so that's the thing is like I have friends of mine that do a lot of therapies. Then I asked the question, like I have one friend, it's like 20th time doing some kind of, worked by now? Like 20 times in? You know what I mean?
There's that counter thing too, where it's like a lot of therapists, and I've gone to a few therapists where it's like, kind of been like, okay, well, was this really worth the value? Because they just kind of sit there and let you talk. And then, okay, sure, that's cathartic to some degree.
Yeah.
But like, I'm coming here for tools, man. I'm coming here to learn something, to like incorporate it into my life. I'm not just coming here to like blab and blab and blab about the past. I've done enough of that, right? Like, I think for human beings, it doesn't come natural to think positively. Honestly, for most.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and that's like an evolutionary adaptation, a negative one, unfortunately, because like we have to concentrate on the negative in order to escape from the tiger or whoever. We have to see those negative things and build negative patterns to ensure that we're ready for
it's a safety precaution.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It potentially to happen again. So it's like we're not born with a manual for the brain, right? And very few people understand it and very few people teach it. And it's kind of, you're on your own. Okay, well, here, go out into the world. You're lucky if you learn enough. Like so many of us have so much free-flowing anxiety throughout the day about ourselves, the negative self-talk, the monkey in the brain. Like, and we go to therapy and we talk and we talk and we talk. And sometimes literally just going down and chop down a tree.
Nah.
Go and chop a damn tree down.
Not even a tree, but...
use your body, right?
At least for in the West, like I think it's seldom that people experience real, I want to say living, but experiential nature experiences.
Brother.
You know what I mean? Like real, like I used to go portaging in Algonquin Park. I'm talking about no food. We brought rifles.
Yeah, dude.
In case of a bear, fishing rods, and 60 ounces of vodka.
Yeah. There's the Eastern Bloc in you.
That's right. And straight up portaging, like no food.
Yeah,
like literally no fucking food.
Yeah.
And we had to tell you crazy bear encounter stories. And portaging for 7 days. Like we had to fish, we had to catch, great fucking time. I remember, like, thank fucking God I did not grow up in social media or cell phone. I was the last generation before the new generation. I'm 34. It's seldom that I hear people do stuff like that. Seldom that they experience nature. They go in and they experience it.
Dude, and it's such an integral part, like all the science. Like, frankly, like, look, why do you need science to tell you need nature? But okay, let's say we do.
Mm-hmm.
All the science confirms that it is the healthiest thing for you. Next to like exercise and diet, you need nature.
Yep.
And for me, that's always been another pivotal part that's helped me like become a better person, live that concept of arete, is stepping out into that kind of darkness, so to speak, going on big trips, whether through the Himalayas. I hiked there for a month and a half. We were shooting a documentary. Dude, I got so sick that I was sick for a year and a half after.
From what, just bacteria or?
Everything.
Really?
Everything. Altitude, bacteria. I had some sort of single cellular organisms. Like it was just nuts. And
fucking
I was on
Himalaya fucked you up, eh?
type of antibiotic and anti-parasitic. And I was a mess when I came back. I was 40 pounds thinner.
Yeah.
And I came back and mind you, this is a little off topic, but it's like, I actually had to come back and do more adjusting living here than I had to going over there. That was real for me. It was like one foot in front of the other. Like whatever, 16, 20,000 feet elevation. I'm not a walker. Like my feet they're flat as a board.
Yeah.
I'm not a runner. That's not me.
Yeah.
I like to push it in the gym, But so for me, that was really pushing my boundaries. And when I was there, hyperventilating, not enough oxygen, can't breathe, there's like a path that's a foot, in width. And if you, go the wrong way, you're dropping 16,000 feet. it was a huge deal. And then the 40 pounds on your back and like your stomach is killing you. Like, I'm not saying everybody has to take that type of journey, but my God, did I ever learn a lot about myself and what I'm capable of and what's dear to me and what's important. And there was this one moment, like along this journey, I always go back to this. And it's like, sometimes it's those subtle little things that like you really hold dear. We had been walking all day. It was like 16 kilometer, which doesn't seem like much, but you try walking that, uphill, high altitude, rocks everywhere, uneven terrain with a huge backpack. And all of a sudden it becomes very difficult. And it took us all day. And we had to do it because we had to cross these rivers that would, grow in height and become absolutely uncrossable otherwise. So it was kind of like, evening and the stars were out and like there was this roaring fire and we had a guide with us and he was an incredible guy and Dheeraj was his name. It was him. It was like us around this campfire and he started singing at the top of his lungs. I mean, he had a bit to drink, which was great, but he started chanting like the song of like his people. You know what I mean? And it was so beautiful. And I was there in this moment, taking a leak next to a tree. And for me, that moment of just like being in it, being raw, not having the thoughts of, do I need to do this? Do I need to do that? What's this bill going to be? Am I successful enough? Is it this? Is it that? Like being in that moment, knowing that I had just pushed myself beyond my boundaries of comfort and now I get to relax was more meaningful and powerful than like anything I'd ever experienced before.
You mentioned something interesting. You said when you came back to the city, you had a hard time adjusting.
Oh my God, dude. Out there when people had nothing, in the Himalayas, in Ladakh, which is like the Indian Himalayas, there's little villages and they barely have anything. They live off of rice and like a little bit of mutton, which is like their type of lamb or sheep. That's what really fucked me up. But they have nothing and they're willing to give you the skin off their backs. When you walk through their village, they welcome you in, they give you their wine. It's like, they don't have that much. And there's just so much authenticity there. And when I came back here, it was culture shock for me. Not the other way around.
You're familiar with Dunbar's number? 50, give or take? I've been talking about this for a while, and my thesis is, in our generation, we will see an exodus of people leaving cities. I think cities, for the most part, the reason why people are in cities is because of opportunity. But I think with the advent of better transportation and more remote work, and also people being more honest with themselves, so like, is this really what I want? Cities are not conducive to mental health.
What's interesting about that is like you're saying opportunity, but I think we often don't consider the opportunity cost.
Yes.
Right? We often see opportunity and we're like, ooh, opportunity, I have to take it. But there's a cost to every single opportunity that doesn't often come into the calculation. Like when we start doing that, maybe we'll have other opinions. But that's very interesting. You know what? Actually, I think that too. And I can't wait for that.
Yeah, my wife and I are looking already to go outside the city.
Bro, I've been the type of guy who wants to build a freaking commune. Like literally, with good people, who are there, who have something to, who are grateful, who have something to provide, like who give back. Like, for me, it was this fantasy about having like a complex amongst friends, somewhere just outside of the city where you can do some farming, like create beautiful routines, like things that are wholesome. I feel like community is
Amish 2.0.
Yeah, well, exactly. With electricity
with tech.
And a wicked high-speed internet connection.
Fiber optics.
Yeah. But, it's like that type of community, dude, it's missing, desperately missing. The Greeks had that. They had tiny little city-states, right?
Yeah.
So it worked for them, and they embodied this concept of arete. But here, living amongst millions of other people, we lack community. We don't say hello to the people in the elevator, in the condos. Like, if you do, you kind of look like you're a nut bar.
I'll tell you a funny story. So I lived in Kelowna for a couple of years while my wife finished her undergrad. Beautiful city in British Columbia interior. And I had a hard time adjusting at the beginning because people kept on waving, saying hello to me. I'm like, and I was like standoffish. I'm like, yo, who the fuck are you?
Right.
You know what I mean?
I feel you.
It took a while for me to adopt. I'm like, Smiling.
Yeah.
And I felt weird. I'm like, how the fuck?
Weirdo.
Yeah, I'm like, how the fuck do I respond to this?
Yeah, exactly. How the fuck do I respond to this? That's brilliant right there. Yeah. But it's messed up, man, because it's like it is how we feel. And it's like we almost don't know how to respond when somebody's genuine.
Yeah.
You know? We all wear these shields and I'm like, Canada, oh, people are so polite in Canada. People are so polite. You hear this all over the world. But the reality is like, yeah, people are polite here, but they can also be quite inauthentic. Like in Russia, somebody will just fucking tell you off, or they'll be like, I don't know you.
Yeah.
Right? To me, sometimes that's more polite because at least they're being honest. Whereas here, somebody can be polite and then the next moment, talk shit behind your back. So that's always been a cultural adjustment. But, what is it? I think part of it is the fact that, yeah, we live in these crazy cities that are so busy. We're almost like, we're on that little rat wheel, little mouse wheel.
Treadmill.
Yeah.
Every single day.
So the question is like, can you live a life in the city where you can incorporate things into your life, community, self-development, discovery, right? Like ritual, whatever those things are. Can you live a life that gets you closer to that place, enlightenment, whatever that is? It's like, it's not a fucking destination.
Yeah.
Enlightenment isn't a destination. It's something that you live every day. Like you're quoting Buddhism, and I love thinking about it like living life on the razor's edge. It's a balance. But unless you're balancing, your muscles aren't developing. You're not developing, right? It's like you go out in space, you atrophy. You don't put work into yourself, into your relationships, into your business. It's not just going to stay solid. It's going to atrophy and disintegrate.
Where do you think we're going to head though? Like I have worries where it's going to get worse and worse with tech. And I don't, I'll look at it from a bleak perspective. I don't see how people will be able to adapt to tech and the cognitive dissonance and the wedges and the fact that we weren't trained nor do we have the necessary tools.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of, I view it as like, we're already going down a really dangerous path and it's just going to get worse and worse.
I see this in two ways, and you're totally right. Like there's, that's one very plausible scenario, like the Terminator scenario.
Yeah.
Or any dystopia, tech dystopia, right?
It's just like my worry is we already know the algorithms control your thought patterns.
They can, for sure.
And, for example, if you spend some time in China, you have WeChat. WeChat is its own university.
Yeah.
All your bills are there.
Yeah,
Everything's there. But there's things you can't say on there.
Against the government?
Against other parties. The news that's shown there is only news that they want you to see.
Controlled.
What people don't realize is this controls how you think.
Absolutely.
Every single day you see this is your narrative.
Yeah. Like, this is tough because I think, like, I'm somebody who really believes in people and their capacity for change and higher being and higher living. And at the same time, I'm somebody who understands the science of cognitive biases and the fact that, like, look, you had to make it really easy for yourself to go to the gym. Not like you didn't know that the gym was good for you. Like, you're friggin' kettlebell dude. Like, you've been ripped. You've been shredded. You know what the gym does. But yet you couldn't bring yourself to go there if it was an extra 10-minute, 20-minute, whatever it is drive, right? And I think so, like, what you're saying has a resounding deep impact because people have to be responsible for their consumption. Yes, they do. But people are tired. They're working all day and then they default into behavior that feels good.
Yeah.
So I think the greater burden of responsibility is actually on the creators themselves. But I actually have a very positive viewpoint because looking at kind of the zeitgeist right now, I feel like a lot of the people that started the social media programs that are working there are having this realization. And they've built this beast, this machine that's like powerful and hungry and like advertising dollars. And they're like, oh, fuck. Like, we've created a monster. We can't just scrap it.
Yeah.
What do we need to do to put it into a stream where it's like feeding the good wolf instead of the bad wolf? And, I think that we'll be able to figure it out. I feel better being an optimist.
Yeah, my worry is who defines who's a wolf, who's not. That's my worry.
I think that is a big communist bloc worry. It's like, For sure, it's a big worry. Yeah, who defines that? Is it, are you evil if you're a liberal? Are you evil if you're a conservative? Are you evil if you're a centrist and you can't decide? So
I think we just got to spend less time. I had a app idea. Maybe someone created this already. It's works on very simple cognitive biases. Yeah, the app. You familiar with like social media apps that block on the computer?
Oh yeah,
yeah. So there's a bunch of them, right?
Well, there's actually. Well, I'll talk about this after, but there's one that like I use that it's absolutely incredible.
Now, the one I want to use or create is one that actually hurts you.
Mm-hmm.
So how it works is you install it, you preload money, and if you want to use it, you can pay to use it, but that money goes to some kind of horrible charity or organization that you don't like.
Yeah, I love that.
Sure. Go use your fucking Facebook right now.
Yeah.
But you just pay $10 to that fucked up charity that you don't like.
If you hate Justin Trudeau, goes straight into the liberal.
Yeah.
It's like if you hate, the conservatives, go straight into
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
I love it. That's great. Yeah.
I had an idea before, like the backwards gym payment,
Uh-huh.
where it's like, we want to increase people going to the gym. So instead of you paying the gym, every time you don't show up, you pay the gym. Okay.
That's brilliant, dude.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Yeah. So like that's kind of like hacking the human organism, hacking the software, the hardware, whatever you want to call it. I don't think we do enough of that. Those are incredible ideas.
Because you think about it, like people buy a Good Life membership for like whatever, $50. How many times do you use it? Twice a month, if that?
Totally.
But imagine if it's free, but every time you miss it, you own $10.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things with that where it can be difficult because like for the gyms, it sometimes makes sense where people don't go because like if the gym gets too busy and crowded, then all of a sudden they run into a different type of problem. So it's like finding that kind of, I guess we can call it a panacea, but finding, that ceiling above which it just kind of like dips and becomes a bit chaotic would be tough. But I think the idea is great for sure. We need to play with those things more.
Yeah, we got to understand better because like if the direction that we're going with politics right now is all populism, then like at the end of the day, it's like almost, we've got to a point where, what's it called? Not principles, but policies. We got to a point where like, it's not even about policies. Ameer's policy, Vlad's policy. No, I spoke to one person before. I'm like, why are you voting for Hillary? I didn't even say if I like Hillary now at all.
Yeah.
I didn't even bring that up. It's like, oh, because she's a woman. I'm like,
right.
That's the only reason because she's your gender?
Yeah, I know.
I'm like,
and it's like, look, yeah, everybody picks the lesser of whatever evils they feel. And it's like, who's actually going to go through the paperwork and understand the policies?
We got to make that easier.
Dude, of course, it's such a popularity contest.
I know.
And maybe when you were back in Greece, and again, like you probably knew these people personally. You knew them.
Yeah.
You knew what they were up to.
Yeah.
Like if you were voting, you were part of the system. Whereas here, it's a bit different. It's like, is it real democracy? No,
it's not.
It isn't. And that's the problem. It's like, there's a lot of this like Wizard of Oz stuff happening, right? It's like, there's one image that we're seeing, but then behind the veil, behind the curtain, there's something totally different happening. And well, actually, I think like your space at crypto could probably help get us into the right direction.
Yeah, crypto. Like I'm a firm believer, you can never really control the governments. Governments will go cyclical. They'll be good, bad, so forth and so forth. I believe in creating tools to counteract stuff. Crypto or blockchain is one tool. I also believe there are ways to create better game theoretical governments, that it's a win-win.
Win-win.
This is what like city-states, like Switzerland's a decent example of it. And people mistaken me when I say city-states as in we become our own country. It's not. We just have superseding power to control our own laws, taxation, etc.
Yeah.
So there's no provincial or federal government that come in and be like, this is how Toronto needs to behave. We still pay an X percentage of tax. We're part of Canada still. We want the military. We support the military. We support the infrastructure.
Yeah.
But we're our own political entity.
Yeah.
Our own taxation policy, our own city council, anything.
So in terms of like imports, exports, how would that work?
Anything.
Would that still work federally, do you think? No.
First, we have a port here. It works on a municipal level. So you create game theoretical models where Toronto's a city-state, Montreal's a city. Let's say all the big major cities in Canada. Now we have to be very careful because, simple example, let's say, I'll give you a real example. Let's say Kelowna decides to say no income tax. I'll be the first fucking person on the plane going to Kelowna to live.
Oh,
No income tax? Okay,
course.
I'm in. Right? So then Toronto's like, oh shit, we're losing people.
What do we do?
What do we do?
Right.
And so they counterbalance each other. Then every city has a veto right
Yeah.
to overthrow central government. The central government's job is only one-fold: to protect private property rights of citizens. Without private property rights, you cannot have a society, period. Number two is national security. And when I hear people talking about no borders, I'm like, you must be delusionally deranged.
It's crazy to think that there aren't people out there who want to come in and just take your shit, because there are plenty.
Chimp tribe one, chimp tribe
exactly.
two.
Yeah.
Like, come on, give me a fucking break, man. Like a 5-year-old will tell you this. Borders exist. Now, question of where the borders, that's a different story. These are man-made things, but borders need to exist.
They're an approximation. They're an abstraction that we need in order to like live a decent life.
So we need a central government for private property rights, military, and it can be like other stuff, maybe like a big R&D research stuff. But more or less, the city-states are responsible for their citizens.
Very interesting. It's very interesting. It's interesting how voting would play out in that kind of sphere. It's interesting because like maybe there would be more community, more capacity to know who you're voting for.
Well, Alberta's talking about this right now. They're fed up.
Yeah.
Completely fed up.
It's going to take experimentation. I think that we are, it's kind of like that thing where, again, we hunker down. We don't like change, right? We like to stick to the MO.
Singapore's a city-state. Technically, somehow Hong Kong's a city-state. Canada, believe it or not, has city-states already. People just don't realize it. Native reserves, they're city-states.
Yeah.
Legally, they're city-states. They have their own constitution, own police, own laws, own taxation.
Right.
There's a model that already exists here in Canada. I've always wondered, I'm like, man, if it would be cool if we can like talk to the Aboriginal tribes and be like, how do we create this into like a knowledge economy?
Yeah.
Like, fuck the casinos. Fuck that shit.
By God, they have a lot of their own problems, right?
Yeah.
Like, rife with problems. But that would be a very interesting kind of way to pivot. Yeah. How do you create a knowledge economy out of it?
Yeah.
Love that idea.
Yeah. But like, I don't know, like for me, I kind of lean towards Sam Harris's thinking on this. And I'll break it down like this. So my dad was born 1939. I think it's 81. And he grew up in former Yugoslavia. And most people at that time, there was pretty much no electricity, no TV, horse and carriage, Austro-Hungarian Empire. Look at where we are today, 2020. Supercomputers, fiber optics, AI. And it's a mindfuck for me to think in like 80 years where we progressed. Like a mindfuck from like nothing to this. Now, could we do better? Yes, but still, the pace that we went is astronomical. I can't comprehend where we're going to be in 10 years. Might as well 100 years.
Yeah.
Right? Moore's law is getting broken with silicon.
Quantum computing.
Crypto, all this, CRISPR, human engineering.
And dude, yet we are the same, right? Like we're the same organism. That's what terrifies me is that you go back, you read Marcus Aurelius, you go even further back, you read like the ancient stories, the myths, and it's like we're always having the same problem.
Mm-hmm.
Repeating. And we don't go back often enough. A lot of us don't read the historic texts. Don't learn from the past.
René Girard has the mimetic theory, which to simplify, it's like monkey see, monkey do. You got this hive mind, and eventually when shit hits the fan, the hive mind needs a scapegoat to kill because it's passing the puck. The blame is not on me, the blame's on that.
That all the time.
Yeah, and it's been repeated in history 24/7, nonstop. Yeah. And so this is why I'm not a firm believer in like crazy activism or people screaming. I'm like, you're just a political, like there's that one funny Russian guy. His name, he calls them useful idiots.
That's an old communist term.
Yeah. And I view most people who are screaming on top of their lungs useful idiots. I'm like, you're not creating anything new. You're not adding value. You're not creating better technology. You're not creating better systems. You're pretty much screaming.
Yeah. Or in some ways, like they're actually making it easier for the thing that they're screaming against to like happen or to own them.
Yeah. And so for me, it's like going back to Sam Harris is like, there's many different scenarios that we can kill each other in 100 years. Many. And so if we can survive, I think, the next 100 years without shredding ourselves up, I think we're good.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. I think the technology is at a point, like, I mean, we've had the atom bomb for a good while,
Look,
right? A
yeah.
few decades
Yeah.
now, and we haven't. And thank God. And I think there's been a few close calls where somebody's like literally had their, their finger
Oh,
on
yeah.
the trigger
Yeah.
and hadn't done it because they chose to, kind of like not listen to the chain of command.
Yeah, there's a Russian guy in the
Yeah,
sub.
exactly,
Forget his
exactly.
name, but yeah, that story's crazy, man.
Yeah.
The man who saved the world.
Like everything hung on that tiny little spider's thread of fine balance. And it's
crazy.
like, that's it. And we're still here to talk about it. But okay, this brings me back to something that like just always blows my mind. And it's like probability, right? The whole collapsing wave of probability. Like I always say this, right? So you have a 1 out of like 200 million chance or so of being born in terms of like the sperm that was you ovulated the egg that was to become you.
Mm-hmm.
That's almost no chance at all. And you won that lottery. For the universe to exist as it does, for particles to exist, for the Big Bang to have happened, any of it, as far as the best calculations seem to understand, it's like a chance of 1 in the 10 to the power of 299. That's 299 zeros.
Yeah.
That is against every single perceivable odd. And yet we are here talking, expressing, right? And it's like we get so caught up in the details and just like who's right, who's wrong. And we forget how against all probability, life continues.
Yeah, there's an interesting biocentrism theory.
Yes.
The consciousness one.
Dude.
Predates the universe. The consciousness creates a universe.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So there's this guy, David Bohm. He's actually a theoretical physicist. Well, I don't believe he's any longer alive, but have you heard of Jerry Krishnamurti?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so they were really good friends. And David Bohm was a theoretical physicist at the time. He was doing a lot of work on quantum mechanics. And his theory was that like beyond everything, beyond the perceivable, at the very smallest, finest scales of measurement, there exists something called the implicate order. And it's where all intelligence comes from. It's like where everything gets woven out of. Almost like if you think about strings, well, it's like that's consciousness. It's like, and it made me think of, and the reason actually that he really liked Krishnamurti is because like the old Brahmins used to say in Hindu mythology that like Brahma, which is the Godhead, their origin myth, was bored. There was nothingness, and it decided to play a game with itself. And so what Brahma did is it split itself into so many different pieces, right? So that it could play this game of hide and seek to find itself, find those pieces, try to understand what it was. And it hit itself so well that like for the rest of eternity, for the rest of the universe, it was search the seek.
Yeah, so I have a good example for modern day when it comes to the Brahmin story. I always say God is a joker. This is why in a lot of mythologies, the joker figure is the most revered.
Yes.
But we can substitute the word Brahmin for AI. Let's say omnipresent, omnipotent, super entity. Call it consciousness, whatever you want to call it, label it anything. You and I are this thing. And at some point, we get bored. And we have one daunting question. And the question that we can't answer is like, where do I come from? I have no idea.
Yeah.
And it's omnipresent, omnipotent AI. So what do? We create a simulation to figure out if any of these simulations become me.
Right. Wow. Yeah. Boom. That actually is very interesting because it just brings me back to fractals, right? Like fractal geometry, fractal mathematics.
Oh, I love that stuff.
It's so fascinating because, I mean, it's fascinating from the perspective of like, okay, at the very like basic scale, it's like you look at your lungs, you look at a tree.
Yeah.
And they're a fractal system of like, smaller like, slight variation, but it's all like. And you breathe out, they breathe in, and there's this incredible like symbiosis. And I've had so many incredible experiences on psychedelics that showed me the fractal mind, the fractal consciousness, fractal reality of the universe. So to me, it's like everything that we think is an approximation. It's just an abstraction. Because the deeper you go, the deeper you measure, you'll never get to the end.
There is no end.
There is no end. That's exactly it. It's like looking at a Mandelbrot set. It keeps going and going and going, and it always looks different.
Yeah.
But yet it's
You
all
ever
the
seen
same.
that Buddha Mandelbrot?
Oh,
Oh, fuck, bro. I'll do this in real time.
please.
It's crazy.
Yeah, like for people who maybe aren't familiar with fractals, I highly recommend watching a documentary on fractals, or even going on YouTube and looking at like a Mandelbrot set, because there's
This
these
is-
incredible animations out there.
One of the big benefits of fractals too, also when it comes to geography, is we were better able to identify coastal lines.
Yes, yes.
Pull this up.
You know, it's interesting, just as a side note, that you were like, okay, God is like this joker, because my favorite quote is, you know, God is a comedian playing to a sold out crowd,
Yeah,
too
man.
afraid to laugh.
That's exactly it. Oh, look, there it go. There it is.
Wow.
Yeah.
Damn. Crazy.
Crazy, man. Yeah, fractals is insane.
So it's like fractals, right? Like, what is it? It's like this mathematical truth, this geometric truth, and it literally is imbued in nature. The way trees grow, the way mycelium spreads, the way our neurons spread and fire, like it's all fractal geometry.
Mm-hmm.
And if anything that I've learned from fractals is that like it never ends.
No. Alan Watts has a good saying. I know a lot of people are afraid of death. The West has a bad relationship with death.
Absolutely.
Or at least Western Europeans, the Aborigines, he had a good relationship with death. And his saying is like, where were you before you were born?
Yeah. It's funny because I've got Alan Watts on here too. And for me, my favorite Alan Watts thing is like, you are the happening. You're not just what happens to you. Where were you before you were born? You're not just the shit that happens to you in your life.
Mm-hmm.
You are life. And that's a bit deep for some people. It's like, huh? How? No, I'm Vlad. I'm not this stuff that happens to me. I'm not the bus that hit me. I think the power of psychedelics, sometimes they can show you that you are actually all of those things. This is getting pretty deep, pretty far out there.
Yeah, I think there is. We could summarize, though, the message. Because I know a lot of people might be listening like, what the fuck are these guys on? Mind you, we're not on any psychedelics right
No,
now.
we're good. We're sober.
Yeah. Goes back to like integration and practicality. And so, you know, you and I can sit here all day and talk about different theories and fractals and geometry, quantum physics and mechanics. But going back to my example, my friend, flat earth and lizard people, is like, okay, it's great data. There's not too much I can do with it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, let's say even like religious people. Like I talk with religious people. I'm like, sure, your God exists. That doesn't change how I live.
Yeah. It might change how they live.
For me, it doesn't change whatsoever.
Exactly.
And it's, I think goes back to the nature thing we talked about. I really, truly believe that people don't experience living. And I'm going to revert it back into the hunter and gatherers. Now, I'm also in the camp. I don't believe just 10,000 years ago we're hunters and gatherers. I think there's way more history. I think we've been bombarded by meteorites and asteroids, had Earth-level extinction events. I know at one point in time we were down to only like 15,000 humans on the planet, and we repopulated. Like we're super survivors. And I'm not just talking about Homo sapiens. I'm talking about, you know, Homo erectus,
Right.
all the way back to our lineage, right? If you look at our lineage of millions of years, even predating Homo sapiens, there's a commonality in our lineage. We experience living, I don't like the word now, but we experience living in our surrounding environments. We didn't do things for the sake of doing things. We didn't wake up, go to 9-to-5 job. We weren't worrying about mortgages. We weren't worrying about college tuition fees.
We have to feed ourselves.
Yeah, the Maslow hierarchy needs. What mattered the most is the safety of our little tribe that we had here and getting food and reproduction, right? Food, sex, safety. We're good to go, right? The simple things that matter. And so through millions of years of evolution, we've been imprinted this genetic makeup. And remember, even though we've encoded the DNA, we've soon come to realization there's epigenetics. One gene does many things, and we still don't know everything because now you have all this section of like junk DNA and mitochondrial DNA. It's like we're just scratching the surface. And so for me, it's if I'm an observer, I'm looking this from a subjective manner as an observer, looking how our ancestors or even like modern apes, how they behave. It's like I think really I think that this is why people have a deep connection when they're walking in a forest or they're fishing, or they just like look at the beach. Like we've been doing this for millions of years. And we've, in the last, say, 50 years, we've stopped this.
We live in a completely different world than the overwhelming majority of our ancestors have lived.
No shit, you're gonna have a psychedelic. You're gonna have a schizophrenic breakdown when you're in a fucking cubicle for 9 hours a day for fucking 10 years.
Absolutely, sitting there. We're not meant to sit.
No, not at all.
And so, like, I think coming back to fractals for me, and kind of what you're saying is that, like, for me, understanding fractals helps me appreciate and helps me have a reverence for nature. A deeper reverence, because I see the connectedness. I see the connection. I don't just feel it, I also see it. And it's kind of like science. It's like, does breaking things down and does science take the magic out of life? No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think that it doesn't have to. I think it can if you allow it to, but I don't think it has to. I think it can re-imbue the magic into life by helping you see how incredible things are, how incredibly detailed things are, how against all odds they've come to be. And that's where the fractals come in. It's like, holy cow, everything is actually connected.
Mm-hmm.
Everything.
For me, it's always a mindfuck when I think, I'm like, how I was fucking born? Like I come from a sperm and an egg.
Dude, I'm a father now. I have a 16-month-old, and I've never been a person who, I've always wanted to go through the process of raising a child and like kind of having a second chance at life, almost, of like teaching him the things I know and sharing. Like I love sharing, right? Mm-hmm. So I've always wanted that, but at the same time, I was always like, kid, hell no. Like that's a lot of responsibility and all that other kind of jazz that goes along with it. But I'll tell you, man, that like the moment he was held up and he came out of his womb was a psychedelic moment for me. I yelled, what the fuck? Because time slowed down, and all of a sudden it's like that thing within me that breathes, that beats my heart, the real me that isn't Vlad. It all made sense right there. And that's my experience. I'm not saying that everybody's going to have that experience, but that was my experience. And it's like everything made sense. It gave me so much more innate purpose. Not to say that like I'm just living for him, but it's like it came full circle. It was that like Hermann Hesse Siddhartha moment. Like it came full circle in my life. I gave back. And now it's not just me being selfish anymore. And now it's like all the mistakes I've made and everything else, like I'm gonna make some of those too, and that's okay. But I don't even have the words to describe it. But it was like a psychedelic moment for me, very powerful one. I think it speaks to that like fractal nature to like reproduce.
Mm-hmm.
He is me, and yet
half your genes.
Wild,
crazy, eh? Like Genghis Khan has like 1 in like 100 people have his genes.
Oh, totally. Like, they did a lot of raping and pillaging back then.
Genghis Khan was crazy.
Yeah, they spread like wildfire. Yeah.
I can't even imagine how it would be to like live back then.
Oh my God, just an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
Like, and this is another thing where like a lot of people don't realize, because we have it so good, right? And we've been like coddled and stuff like that, and some of us anyway. And we don't realize how tough life was for 99.999% of existence.
You go places, whether it's like Asian Minor or Africa or Latin America, it's fucking
absolutely.
Things are tough.
The whole world was like that, you know? And it's like you were lucky enough to get food.
Yes, but there's a freedom though in that though. That live feeling,
the survival mechanism. You hear a lot of times about people who have gone to war.
Yes.
And they're like, apart from the PTSD and some of the really negative elements that they come back from, there's this element that I hear a lot, where it's like They were there surviving, one foot in front of the other. And it's kind of what I felt in the Himalayas. I didn't have anybody shooting at me. Maybe it would have taken it to a whole nother level. But that's all that you cared about. It was the one goal. You weren't thinking about anything else. You didn't have any other anxieties or worries. It was just
Did you read Sebastian
survive.
Junger's book, Tribe?
No.
This is all he talks about.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah. He gives one example in Bosnia. During the Bosnian War, after it finished, there was like signs that it was better during the war, like from the connection perspective.
Right. Yeah, the camaraderie. And they say actually people who have gone through war together build the strongest bonds and relationships. Yeah. Through adversity, that type of adversity. Yeah. I think we're engineered for it.
Yeah, I think we're engineered. We're obviously not engineered
not for war. That's
Yeah.
that's what I don't mean to say. I mean, like, we're engineered for pushing and for overcoming hardship.
Yeah, I think humans in general, I think there are a small group of humans who are sociopaths, who are engineered to kill, and they have no remorse. And that's how they're programmed. Just the fact, just deal with it. And, there's theories now that we pillaged and raped the Neanderthals and we killed them out of existence. And so that's why I think like a small percentage of humans have Neanderthal DNA. But that's on small scale, right? It's different when you have
at the tail end of the curve.
Yeah, you have nukes and you have tanks and RPGs and F-16s, like a whole different ball game. Obviously, I don't recommend war, nor do I want anyone to go to war. I think war is absolutely fucked. And obviously, it's never the citizens, it's governments. And obviously, the citizens are the collateral damage of nation states that want to control and get resources. It's all, at the end of the day, it's an incentive model.
It's always the little guy.
It's always. And so, but there are ways where you can incorporate, like I mentioned earlier, where like, how do you challenge yourself? Whether it's a group of friends going together and hiking a crazy hike or hunting or whatever, canoeing, whitewater rafting, some activity
It's
together.
not Netflix.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's something else. It's not just sitting on your phone. It's not just going out, drinking, partying, whatever that is, or just like working on your business 24/7. Because like, honestly, frankly, like this whole entrepreneurialism thing today, and it's like how sexy it's become. That's another thing that can be very dangerous. I think it's something that gets you away from yourself, right?
Right. I'm on the weird camp. I don't believe. I think many people, even though they want to be, they're not. I think depending on where you're on the spectrum, you could learn some traits, but there's very few people who are starters, who understand, not even understand, who have the risk tolerance. I have a lot of really smart friends. Actually, they make way more money in the company if they ever run their own company. Yeah. They don't have any risk tolerance. And they talk about doing it. I'm like, you're just programmed not to, man.
Yeah. I do. See, I've always believed that you can deprogram, and it's tough, right? It's tough. You have to go against
I don't know if you're going to deprogram. I think you got to
beliefs.
find people who are, who can substitute your software. Like for me, I'm a starter.
Yeah.
I'm a fucking hurricane.
Same. That's how I am. Yeah.
Go in, destroy shit. I don't give a fuck. Burn it all down after. I don't care. I have zero connection to it.
Right.
That's how I am. I don't care. On to the next thing, right?
Yeah.
Like Genghis Khan. Next startup. But when it comes to like the bureaucracy of it,
the operation,
the detail, across the T's, dot T, I'm like,
that's my weakness too, and I definitely have to substitute there.
Sure. So, but let's say you are this analytical person, like you may not be the starter, but you can be at least partner with people around you. But like selling the dream, like everyone's an entrepreneur, I'm like, I don't know
absolutely
about that.
It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And there's intrapreneurship too, right? Which is like, it harnesses the spirit of entrepreneurship, but it does it, in an organization where like, there's an alignment on belief systems. Man.
Like when people tell me, I've had this discussion with people before. Why are you doing a startup? To make money? I'm like, bro, I'm going to tell you 100 fucking things that you can make money a million times more.
So much easier.
Startup's the worst thing to make money. Worst. Like if you're starting a startup to make money, run.
Well, it's like big risk, big reward, but big risk and highly unlikely that it'll succeed.
Ways, man. You can commission sales, brokering deals, putting deals together.
For sure.
So many easier ways to make money, man.
Lots of fast lanes out there.
Yeah. Which kind of, it's a good segue to this, man.
Yeah.
Tell me about this forward.
Well, this is something that I'm extremely, extremely passionate about, because I think like this combines not only kind of the entrepreneurial spirit, but also it combines all of the knowledge that I have seeked out throughout my life. And it has to do with ritual. It has to do with the science of ritual. And it's a skincare line.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a guy, and skincare hasn't always been my forte. You know, self-care hasn't always been my forte. But through my life's journey, I have realized the importance and the power of it. And I went through a period, especially, during becoming a father, not sleeping and not taking very good care of myself, where my body started going through a lot of changes, right? Like I actually got rosacea, like my skin started to get super dry, and I felt bad. Like I had all these aches and pains, like my feet were killing me, my back was killing me. I was waking up, I was honestly feeling like, I'm 37, and I honestly felt like I was, 67.
This is it. I'm dying.
Dude, that's how it felt. That's how it felt. And I'm not even kidding you. And so I started, using skincare products, and I've always used creams and stuff like that. But what I noticed was there was this incredible connection to myself when I was doing it mindfully in the bathroom, facing myself. And through all of these other habits and rituals that I had built up to kind of put myself into that state of arete, that state where like I feel good about myself and I know that I am building my best future, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the thinking that has imbued this skincare line. So essentially, this is a skincare line that is USDA organic. So it's 95% organic or more. It's based on nature-based, forest-based, science-backed ingredients. And to me, there was a chance not just to create an incredible skincare line, to make it simple, not just for women, but for men, right? But to take what people are doing already in the washroom, often very mindlessly, and to piggyback off of that and incorporate things that we know are going to actually help improve their lives, help improve their connection to themselves, their connection to nature, their connection to others. So to build rituals that are mindful.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like, because inside you have these cool fucking cards here.
Yeah, so this was, kind of part of the ritual that we're developing. And these are kind of cards where you reflect throughout the morning or the evening on these three kind of pillars: the other, the self, and nature. And it's a moment to put yourself into the right space. And there's the physical component, part of that ritual as well. But these are all things that kind of like hone your mind, because your mind is like the honing beacon of your future, to put you into the right mental space to crush your day, have an incredible day and build an incredible life. And so I see it as like the skincare is the one component, right? Your skin is your biggest organ, and you want to make sure that you're treating it with respect and you're putting on things that are wholesome, right? Organic, things that work, things that make you feel better, make you look better. But the other component is the mind, right? The emotions, the body. And that's something that we often disregard. And so the thinking was like, how do we create a ritual that can actually be, let's say, scientifically backed, effective, right? To help you get on a journey every single morning and every single evening, whether to wind up or to wind down, to make sure that you are living that moment of arete, like that you are actually stepping into that place that's getting you aligned with your best self. So that's why I'm super passionate about it.
Cool. When's it launching?
It is launching. So this is a soft launch.
Yeah.
It's launching late November, hopefully. We have one product that we're launching with so far, which is a serum.
Yeah.
And it's actually mushroom based. There's 3 hero ingredient mushrooms. And there's 18 incredible hero kind of all-encompassing ingredients that do everything from like calm, soothe, reduce wrinkles, remove redness, increase the collagen in your skin, increase the elastin. And it's farmed by hand in Northern Ontario.
Nice.
So it's very exciting stuff.
And so everyone gets a card when they order, or?
So part of our package will have cards. They're going to be sold as separate packs, but you will get kind of like a starter deck. Absolutely.
Very cool, man. Yeah. I'm excited for you. This is cool.
You.
I like it. Forward skincare.
Yeah, and it's so the concept of forward is kind of also like a great book, a great story usually starts with a great forward.
Mm-hmm.
And your life should start with a forward as well. And that's where forward skincare came from.
Cool. Well, Vlad, thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
If people want to get a hold of you, what's the best resource?
Probably right now, Facebook, Instagram, or Forward Skincare. All
right, so it is. There you guys go. If you guys enjoyed this episode, leave a review on iTunes and head over to YouTube. Leave a comment, and I'll see you guys for the next episode. Peace.
All right.